Welcome to Adventures in Alchemy, a podcast filled with witchy tips and true stories to inspire your magical life. I am Michelle Martin Dobbins, the creator of Daily Alchemy and the Adventures in Alchemy podcast. This podcast is supported by the Daily Alchemy Premium Members Lab. I don't run a Patreon, so I keep membership at a very economical $11.11 a month. For that, you not only help sponsor this podcast, but you will receive access to 14 alchemy courses, and we add a new course each quarter, access to Reiki Level 1, 2, and Master's training and distance attunements, plus a library of audio distance Reiki healings, monthly alchemical experiments, PDFs of all my books and planners, and 15% off of everything else I sell. Also, there's a members-only Facebook group, so we can chat amongst ourselves in a private community. So when you join, I do ask that you commit to 3 months, since you are able to access and download all of the content immediately. It's $33.33 for the first 3 months, and then $11.11 every month after. I am so grateful to all the premium members who support my work, and I'd love to have you as a premium member too. If you're not already one, you can go to DAPM Lab, that stands for Daily Alchemy Premium Members Lab, dapmlab.com to check it out, or there'll be a link in the show notes. Now, on with the show, and may it be a blessing to all who listen. Okay, guys, I'm really excited today because I have a special guest, and I'm going to try really hard to get her name right. It's Mela Borawski?
That's right.
Okay, good. Mela is a 48-year-old mother and wife. She's born and raised in the Deep South. She is also a South Carolina witch like me. She's lived in South Carolina most of her life, and she's followed a pagan path for about 16 years, though only openly pagan in her community for about 5 years. And I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
She is an ordained pagan minister and certified in hypnotherapy and spiritual coaching. She owns 3 Rays of Light and recently started a witchy podcast called Belle, Book, and Candle. She's a green hedge witch, enjoying life on her homestead with her family, chickens and goats and gardens. All things that I love too. So I'm really excited to talk to you. We have a lot of interesting things that I'm excited to pick your brain about and hear your thoughts on. But just to start out, I saw that you have been on a pagan path for 16 years. And so I always like to ask people, like, what drew them to magic and how old were you? You get interested in that before 16 years ago, or something that you were interested in as a child, or just as an adult?
Yeah. So I really appreciate you having me on your show. And my story is, I think, pretty interesting, at least to myself, because I was raised in an extremely legalistic Christian church, almost like a cult.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really difficult for me because a lot of things happened in my childhood from a lot of my spiritual gifts that people in my church were telling me, even as a child, that I was demon possessed or being influenced by demons. I would have dreams that would come true. I would tell my mom these stories of visiting Venice, Italy, and telling her every detail of it, and I'd never been in my life and things like that. And so witchcraft and spiritual gifts and all that sort of thing was really shown to be something that was bad. And so even though I was having these feelings and interested in magic, and I didn't even know really what to call it because I was so sheltered, it really was like a cult, that when I finally got out and started looking at things, funnily enough, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons and role play games and things like that. And so in my 20s, I began to explore, what is a druid? What is a mage? What is magic? And I think that was a good route for me because I could pretend for a little bit. But the more I studied it, the more I realized, hey, a lot of the stuff that I'm playing in this game is actually stuff that I'm interested in real life that I was really stifled about.
Wow. That is a really interesting upbringing, and it's pretty cool that you were able to bridge that gap and come to where you are now, where it seems like you're very comfortable in who you are and the gifts that you have.
It's taken a long time to get that far. I'm almost 50 years old, and I don't feel like I've really been comfortable in my own skin for much of my life, maybe only the past 10 years. And honestly, learning to love myself, which is really a witchy concept, even though you really don't think about it, but learning to love myself and see myself as something that is incredible and important to myself, whether anyone else sees it or not, that opened up the world to me and allowed me to just be comfortable with who I was, including all my gifts, including all the crazy stuff, talking to animals and going out and sitting under a tree for however long.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. Yeah. Loving yourself is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So you started with the Dungeons and Dragons and then transitioned in. What kind of practices did you start with when you started diving a little bit deeper into magic?
One of the first things that my mom remembers me doing is dressing in all white and having a full moon ritual. So full moon rituals were very important for me when I started really getting involved, just very personally. I wasn't doing it in public. My family was still kind of getting out of the church, so they weren't really sure what I was doing or if I should be doing it. But my parents are some of my biggest supporters now. So full moon ceremonies, reading every single thing that I could get my hands on, collecting crystals. Because I was so kind of repressed as a child and teenager, when I got into my mid 20s to 30s, that's kind of when I was in my rebellion stage. And I had a goth kind of a stage. So I was dressing a little more witchy, but my parents would just called it goth. And my husband, I was married and had children by that time, but I had a lot of health issues. I had a lot of mental health issues before I learned to love myself because of all the just stuff that I went through growing up in early childhood. So it took a lot of work to get to the path. And as I continued down that path, it just grew into having an altar in my home, spending time. I'm clairvoyant, so a lot of times when I do journeys or path working sort of thing, I'm taken on this really complete journey to meet things and people in the other world. And so for a long time, that was very scary to me. But when I began to follow my path more openly with myself, that actually helped me figure out what my path exactly was.
That's very cool. It sounds like a nice process. It's really nice that your family left the church with you. And so it's kind of a group thing.
Yeah, it took them a little bit longer than me. But we all live on the same property now. We live on 10 acres here. My parents have a home here. My two sisters have homes. And my mother, even though she doesn't believe exactly like I do, my mother is involved in any of the trainings and workshops and rituals and things that I do. My dad, he even helped me record and wrote a song to play on my podcast. And he's definitely not involved in paganism at all, but he still has chosen to support me. And my husband, who's a Christian, also has grown to the point where he sees that I am healthy, I'm happy, I'm following what I need to follow to make myself find my place in the world. And so he has gotten to the point where he supports me as well.
That's awesome. If everybody could do that, right? Support each
It really is a huge miracle. I mean, it took me 2 episodes of my podcast on Belle Book and Candle to tell my life story. And I went into as much detail as I could. And it really is a miraculous thing. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing going from something that's so structured as being a cult and then having your family members, even you guys all supporting each other in your own different paths.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's what the world should be like.
I agree. I have lots of friends who are of different faiths, and it's interesting. I have lots of conversations with a friend of mine who is a very devout Christian, and like she's in my house, and so she's like, "What is this altar and what's this about?
Yeah.
Why can't it just be like that? Like I can ask her, like, well, what is that, and why do you do that?" And just like be curious and learn from each other and respect each other's differences.
Yeah, exactly.
Social media would be so different, right?
It would. It definitely would.
I guess that's something that we can all kind of just do in our own little lives. And then that's how it spreads to
Yeah,
the rest of the world slowly.
definitely. It's like starting that one little step. It's still a step forward. So whatever you can do in your own life just takes the collective consciousness ahead a little bit.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a little bit. I know you are a pantheist pagan, right?
Yes.
So could you explain a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So pantheism, I've found, is getting more popular in paganism. But most people are still going to be something like a polytheist, which is a belief in many gods and goddesses. A pantheist believes that there is one supreme energy or overarching energy source, and that the gods and goddesses are aspects of that. So it's just a little bit of a different way of looking at it. So I call the source energy, I might say source, universe, whatever word you want to use, the divine. And I am devoted to the Morrigan. She's one of my goddesses. I honor her aspect as a part of the divine, but I also believe that she's an aspect of the overarching source energy. So that's how I kind of explain pantheism. It doesn't really change how I honor her or any other god or goddess. If someone comes to my house and sees my altar, it's going to look like any other altar, or a ritual is going to look the same. But in my theological view, a little bit deeper, I just see it as a little bit different. I just feel like our human minds see the gods and goddesses and we don't quite understand things. And so back in the ancient times when they were seeing the sunrise and the oceans and the moon come out, it was too much for our human minds. And so gods and goddesses, they're aspects of the sun god, the waterfall goddess, and things like that allowed us to understand things a little bit better. But I just believe that overall, there is an energy that is in me, you, every single thing is connected. It's all energy. So this overarching source.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's in line with pretty much how I feel too, even though, as with you, like when I'm working with a deity or a god or goddess, I don't necessarily sit and think this is just one aspect of source, but in my mind.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I feel about it too. And then I feel a little bit of I think you may have alluded to that too, a little bit of an animistic sense of that same sources in everything, in the animals, in the earth, in the rocks, and there's consciousness in everything. And it's all comes from that same source.
Yeah, absolutely. Your crystals, the trees outside. I have a relationship with my land and the plants and the animals on my land and anywhere I go, because that energy, and even scientifically speaking, you have energy in everything. So that energy is still there. We are all connected in some way. Everything is connected.
Yeah. So coming from that place and that perspective, do you have a daily practice that you do or that you aspire to do daily?
I am all about everyday spirituality or everyday witchcraft type of thing. So I have things that I do every day, and some days it might be just a little tiny thing. I think micro habits, they're sometimes called, or tiny habits, are very important. Don't bite off more than you can chew. So every day I spend time at my altar. I will do spiritual house cleaning, which is just basically fixing things up, dusting a little bit, making sure I have, if the seasons are changing, do I want to change something on my altar? That doesn't take a lot of time. But I also have a practice of doing journeys. Sometimes people call it path working, but I will do journeys at least once a week, if not more than that. And that's where I use drumming or some type of meditation music, or maybe I even drum for myself. And I just go and I travel in the spirit world, really, and get guidance or just experience something and learn something or go speak to a spirit of some sort. I have a lot more. I mean, I garden. I have an altar out in my garden. I will leave gifts and offerings to the land spirits. When I get in my pool, I always say, this is a healing pool. I set that intention that it's a healing pool. And I'm always very grateful for everything. I think gratitude is so, so important. You have to be grateful for even the breath when you wake up in the morning that you have it. So gratitude is a spiritual practice that I do every single day. And it gets me through every part of my day. Cooking. I wouldn't call myself necessarily a kitchen witch. I consider myself a green witch, but I am blessing my food. I'm blessing my water. I'm blessing the ingredients. And so that's why I tell people that you don't have to have this special ritual that you do and spend an hour every day sitting there doing something. Your spirituality can be in every single thing of your life, just your everyday things. That's part of your spirituality.
Yeah, I agree. We're very much on the same wavelength with that. That's why I call my website Daily Alchemy, because I believe that our daily practices, if we add, like you're talking about, if we add gratitude to them, if we add mindfulness to them, and just little magical steps. I'm very big into Reiki. So when I cook, I put Reiki in my food, or, so it's like, yeah, your magical practice, although sometimes you're going to sit and journey and do something very specific, but really a big, huge part of magic and witchcraft and spirituality can be just how you live your daily life and overlay it onto.
Yes, yes. I think people who are trying to find their spiritual path and they think it's some special thing because maybe they grew up in Christianity or another religion where on Sunday you went to a church and you had a certain thing that happened and you took the communion. Like that's what they see going into paganism or going into being a witch. And I think that expanding your mind and looking around your entire life, your house, your yard, whatever it is, and seeing the ways that we're connected to nature enables you to expand it out of a building and out of a ritual or out of a certain amount of time that you have to spend.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was going to ask you about, I know that you would consider yourself a hedge witch and not a shaman so much. Do you want to tell a little bit about what the differences in between those are and why you consider yourself to be more of a hedge witch?
Yeah, so I think they're very, very similar, but I have been trying very hard to be aware of cultural appropriation. And I've read a lot of information on every side of this matter. I have friends who call themselves a shaman, and I have some who will not call themselves a shaman and they say they are engaged in shamanistic practices. And then I have those who refuse to use the term shaman or shamanistic at all. So I feel personally that it's appropriating a practice that I'm not part of to call myself a shaman. And I think that a lot of cultures around the world had shamanistic spiritual people. They were called various things like a wise woman or a medicine man, things like that. But to me, shaman is a word that is really associated with a Siberian indigenous spiritual path that I don't personally walk.
Mm-hmm.
So I choose to call myself a hedge witch. A hedge witch journeys to the spirit world just like a shaman would. And they call back missing soul pieces and they meet spirit guides and they find guidance and healing across into the other world, the spirit world, just like a shaman does. So the hedge is that boundary into the spirit world. So a hedge witch journeys or travels through that hedge, that boundary into the spirit world. And I think hedge witch is not appropriative and it describes exactly what I do. And so that's why I call myself a hedge witch. Now, I may say that I'm doing something that's shamanistic, and that is only because it helps people understand, because that's how the world is. That's what people understand. They don't know usually what a hedge witch is. So I may say that I'm doing a shamanistic practice, but hopefully we'll get to a point where we won't even have to use that. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally. 100%. I have the same thing in the sphere of people. And although I don't necessarily call myself a hedge witch, but I call myself an eclectic witch.
Mm-hmm.
But I do some of those things, the journeying things, but I have the same. I have friends who call themselves shamans, but I actually have a friend who I would consider to be a shaman who has actually gone through, who has the cultural lineage and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have some who I'm like, maybe if I were you, I wouldn't, I wouldn't pick that word. But I'm also like, there's so many different shades of how that all works out. I mean, I'm like you, I don't want to be appropriative. And anytime I'm going to use something from someone else's culture, I'm going to be really careful about how I do that, and also how I'm treating and respecting the descendants of that culture. You know, I don't want to take from their ancestors and just be
Right.
like, oh, those are my gifts, when technically, no, they're not. So, yeah.
Smudging is another term that I have been taking out of my vocabulary. We can do smoke cleansing, but smudging is another indigenous practice that I'm not part of that culture. So I don't want to use the term smudge, but I don't judge other people for doing that. If people ask me, I will educate them on what I know, but that's just what I've decided is not going to be part of my practice.
Yeah, I like that. I used to, before I knew better, it's kind of one of those, well, when you know better, you do better things. I used to use the sage. And then as I learned that that was really important to the indigenous cultures, and that also it was being overfarmed and is not so great for them if we take all the white
Mm-hmm.
sage.
Yeah, I don't buy anymore, but I still have some that I use.
Yeah, I've been using pieces of pine from around where I live, or
Mm.
juniper. And I don't know if she still has it for sale, but there's a lady, why is her name? She has Blood and Spice Bush, Becky Byer, and she did a book that she was selling for a while. It's kind of like an online book where she taught people, because, like you said, we've used burning plants,
Mm-hmm.
whatever term, like all cultures have used that to cleanse and stuff. And she's like,
Right.
use something that makes sense for your ancestry, and also that is like abundant where you lived. You just go out in the woods and you can find a juniper branch or some pine or whatever. And I just thought that that made so much more sense anyway. Like when you're talking about how you and I kind of do the same thing too. Like I have this relationship with the land that I live around. And so why would I not use something that's growing in abundance there for my work
Yeah,
than to
exactly.
go there and buy something that is taking away from other people's practice?
Yeah, you go out there and build a relationship with. I have rosemary on my land. I have lavender I'm growing. I've been attempting to grow mugwort, but haven't been very successful. But eventually I will get that down. And I love burning mugwort. And so you have a relationship with that plant as it grows. And I mean, that makes it even more powerful and magical.
Yeah. I've got my rosemary going, so I'm going to try doing some of that. But mugwort's next on my list. I haven't started it yet.
I love mugwort.
I love mugwort tea. I just haven't grown my own yet, but there is something special about growing your own plants.
Yeah, I used mugwort for a wedding that I officiated, and it was mugwort, and I think it had rosemary in it too. I'm not sure. I about smoked everybody out. I had people who said that if I had burned any more of that, they were going to leave the whole building. So be careful about that, burning too much mugwort in a small space.
I'll have to think about that. I did that recently with one of my incenses I had in the house, and I was like, okay, that's an outdoor incense. So, okay, noted. I got it.
Right.
I wanted to dive in a little bit more, though, with you on. I know you talked about you do your own journeys. And is that kind of where you keep a record of the journeys that you do and use that as part of your guiding practice, or how you get answers and divinations for yourself?
I keep a lot of records. I type things out a lot. Sometimes I'll go on a journey and my mom will actually be there facilitating. And so I will, during the journey, I will talk to her and she writes down everything that I say. Sometimes I'll record afterwards. It doesn't work so much for me. I haven't found during, but I love when my mom actually records what's going on. Because, I mean, you mentioned in my bio about hypnosis, so I'm very much about hypnosis, I think when you do a journey, it's a little bit like hypnosis. Drumming naturally puts you in a hypnotic state. That's what it does. In fact, there's scientific study that, and I don't recall the exact amount of time, but after a certain amount of time of listening to drumming, your mind automatically goes into a hypnotic state. So that's why I like using drumming for that, because it puts me in that hypnotic state to be able to journey very easily. Another thing that I like to do is use oracle cards for my own divination. And I also throw bones. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but I have a bone throwing kit that I like to use.
Yeah, I've had bones thrown and read for me, but I don't have my own. I haven't learned that yet, but they are very cool. When you do the drumming, do you drum yourself or do you use a recording of drumming? Or
most of the time I use a recording, and that way I can lay down or lay back. I put something over my eyes, which is how I was trained how to do a journey. And the type of drumming that I use is specifically for journeys. So the drum changes halfway through, and then the drum changes at the end. I usually do a 30-minute journey, and so it will tell me when I'm supposed to start coming back. I just know by the sound of the drums that it's time for me to start coming back.
Very cool. Do you do journeying for clients?
Yes, I journey for clients and I facilitate journeys, hypnosis, meditation, all different sorts of things. We've done cord cuttings and gone to find the pieces of their soul that was missing. Sometimes in the full moon ceremonies that I do for the community, which I've done for about a year and a half now, I will put those type of practices in and take people on some type of, people don't always understand that, but they understand meditation. So I may call it a meditation. But journey is, for me, is when you do something with a purpose. You're going to meet a spirit guide. You're going to get an answer. You're going to do spell work or path working. So yeah, I do that for people, and I do that helping people to do it themselves.
Very cool. And so we'll tell people near the end where they can get your website and everything if they want to have you do that for them. Because you do that like over the internet, right?
Right now, I'm doing it pretty much primarily over the internet, usually on Zoom. But when things get back to normal, when they do, if they do, I will be doing that in person for people in my area.
Very cool. So do you have any stories that you'd like to share, like magical results or maybe a journey that gave you an answer to a question?
Well, last summer, I got sick with the shingles. And I'm pretty young to get shingles, and I was very discouraged. And I was very weak for about the entire month of June, and I've never quite recovered. In fact, I still have exhaustion and nerve pain. But during that point, I was extremely discouraged. I was down. I was feeling very, very sorry for myself. So I decided, as I was laying in bed, that I would do a journey just to see if I could get some help or some healing. And I was really fighting being in bed. I was trying to get up and make my own food and just, I was being a very, very bad patient. And my dad would come every morning to make me breakfast since they live here on the land. And because my husband was at work all day and my sons were gone because my youngest son's in college and my oldest was working. And so it just was me here a lot trying to do stuff I should not have been doing. So I did this journey and I instantly went into this forest and I followed this forest path and I came to a bubbling cauldron and there was a woman garbed in a dark hood standing there. And the message that she gave me was, be the sickness. And I believe that it was the Morrigan giving me that message. She is my patron goddess at this time in my life. So it wasn't like she was trying to give me a hug, because I don't think the Morrigan is all motherly like that. But, I had asked her probably 2 years before that to fix some things in my life, fix my health, help me to feel better. And she was like, be the sickness. And I came out of that. It was just such a vivid journey. I mean, I could smell the smoke of the fire. I could hear the ravens crowing around me. And I came out of that realizing that I was fighting the sickness when I should have just have been the sickness. And be the sickness to me was lay in the damn bed and let people serve you and take the medication and stop fussing all the time about it and just be sick. And that helped me a lot. And so that was a very transformative journey and meeting with a deity that helped me to just lean back, just do what I needed to do, take what I needed to take, and let other people take care of me for a little while.
Yeah, that sounds like amazing advice.
Be the sickness.
For people who aren't familiar with the Morrigan, can you share just a little bit about her? And
The one thing that I tell people about the Morrigan is there is a lot of information out there, and not all of it, well, how should I say this? Some of it is contradictory. So you have to be really careful about who and what you're reading when you're looking into the Morrigan, because a lot of stuff you just don't know. You can look into mythology and historical context and things like that. And in the end, you just have to decide for yourself by UPG, unverified personal gnosis, of what it is that you're having this relationship with or who you're having a relationship with. But I feel like she's very much attached to ravens. I see ravens and crows a lot. When I first felt called by her, I saw them outside all the time. I've always, since I can remember, been attracted to ravens. I have so many different statues and pictures and things like that. And I talked about role playing before, the D&D. Even back in my late 20s and early 30s when I was role playing, I was playing a were-raven, and I was playing these dark, magical, black or red-haired ladies that were very magical. And so even then, I felt like I was being pulled into this certain direction with these feathers. But she is not Hecate. She's not the hearth mother taking care of you, pat on the back type of thing. Be careful what you ask for. I tell people that a lot. She is powerful. She is the warrior queen, and she will come in with her sword in your life. And you ask for something, she will make it happen. And she will make it happen in sometimes chaotic ways. She will tear everything up. And when all the dust goes away, you have exactly what you asked for. So be careful what you ask for, because it could be really difficult for a while as she clears away all the stuff that's creating the problems in your life.
wow, yeah, that sounds like a spiritual awakening, to be sure.
Oh, yeah.
So if somebody is new to either paganism or witchcraft or something magical like that, would you recommend working with the Morrigan? Or how would you maybe recommend they choose what to start or who to start working with?
I think that whoever you're going to work with really calls you, but you have to learn about what's out there before you can be called by someone. I've had a lot of clients and friends tell me, I had this vision or I had this dream, and they would describe the person or say some of the things that happened in the dream or the vision. And I would say, go look that up, go see who that fits. And it would turn out that usually there is some sort of god or goddess that it actually would fit. And then when they start reading information about that, they say, oh, yes, that I really resonate with that. I really feel like this is who it is. So keep a dream journal and do your research. Read everything. Read everything, but don't take everything you read as the absolute truth. I own tons of books that I don't agree with every single thing in it. In fact, there's very few books that I'm going to agree with everything. And I think that for someone new starting on the pagan path, they're looking for these books that are going to be the manual for the rest of their lives. And you have to realize that everyone is writing from their own experience a lot of times when it comes to paganism. And so it's that UPG that I mentioned before, the unverified personal gnosis, the author's personal experience. It's just the nature of the beast and how paganism as the umbrella really is. So if you read a lot of books and then you begin to see the same experience with a lot of people in a lot of different books, and then you feel or have experiences yourself, then it becomes that shared personal gnosis, which then makes a lot more sense, I guess, for you to say, okay, if 15 different people are having the same experience with the Morrigan or something like that, maybe there's something to this and I can look a little deeper into it. But I tell new people all the time, read everything. Don't be concerned with believing every single thing you read, but read everything so that you can figure out what it is that you truly believe. And the other thing that I like to tell, sometimes they're called baby witches or people on the new spiritual path, you realize that you do not need all the fancy tools, all the special expensive herbs and the crystals and the fancy statuary and everything to do spell work and ritual. You just don't need it. You don't have a handcrafted silver chalice that the spell in the book you read says you need. Okay, go get a glass out of your cupboard. You don't have a fancy athame? Oh my goodness. You know, some people will say, well, you cannot do anything without your specially devoted athame. Go get a butter knife. It's okay if you don't have that special herb that's on this list. That is what someone decided because of the attributes of the herb would be good. But there are lots of other herbs that have those same attributes. So find what's in your yard or in your area. It doesn't have to be these special items that you have to do a special order or go to a shop to get. Don't let any of that stop you from walking that path daily. And then I talked about the micro habits, and that's really important as well.
Yeah, that's a big thing, taking those time to build up those micro habits and do little things every day. And I agree with you on the herbs and the crystals and stuff. And I always tell people too, it's like, just because the book says that this herb is good for this, this, and this, but if you feel, you have an intuitive knowing that for you, it's good for healing when the book says it's good for love, then for you, it works for healing.
Yeah.
That's the part of magic and witchcraft and paganism that maybe drew me in a lot over my life, is because I don't like to follow rules. Christianity had too many rules. And so I'm setting up, like, I think they have that, like, that meme was like, if I wanted to follow rules, I'd be a Christian.
Right.
But yeah, you get to play with it and you get to find out that you can have your own relationship with everything, be it a deity or a plant or a crystal or a tree. And that might not be the same as somebody else's. And that doesn't make it wrong or bad or.
Exactly. And that's the same for reading oracle cards or tarot cards. Don't read the book that came with it first. Go through and write down what every card means to you. Use your intuition. Every single person is given a dose of intuition, and just use that to figure out what that card means. And then you can go back and read the book. I'm like you. I like the freedom, but I think some people's personalities, they want a book that tells them exactly how to be the perfect pagan. And so this whole figuring out things themselves, or the mystery part of it, that doesn't appeal to everybody. And so they want to do it exactly like it was said. And when they set this intention that, oh my gosh, I don't have this and I don't have that, so my spell's not even going to work. And that's the intention that they put out. And so it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. The self-fulfilling prophecy there.
Yeah, exactly. You have to feel like you, even if it's fake it till you make it kind of thing, you go into that spell or that ritual or whatever you're doing, regardless of whether you have a butter knife and a solo cup in front of you, you go into it thinking, I am the baddest witch in the town and this is going to work.
Right. I think more than anything else we have, it's the energy, either our own energy or the energy that we channel or direct through the work that we do, that really affects the outcome more than anything else.
Yes, I fully agree with that.
So let's shift a little bit, though, because I know that you do some past life regressions and we touched a little bit on hypnosis. So tell me a little bit about what you do for people with the past life regressions and the hypnosis. I don't know a lot about that. I've had past life regressions done, but I find them very interesting. So
I think hypnosis is one of the most amazing healing modalities that you can do, because a lot of the problems that we have in life, We're ingrained into our worldview from infant, child, teenage, growing up from our family, growing up from the world around us, media. We have this idea of how the world works, and it's not always right, especially if we have trauma or dysfunction in our lives. And so what hypnosis does in a shorter amount of time than going to talk therapy, you could actually rewire your brain. So for instance, I do everything from helping people stop smoking with hypnosis, losing weight with hypnosis, meeting your spirit guide, helping with pain control, like all the normal and metaphysical things you can do with hypnosis. You can do anything with hypnosis. And then the regression is where the past life regression comes in. And all of that, my goal is healing. I like that you call your show Alchemy, Adventures in Alchemy, because I consider myself an alchemist, because you are transmuting and changing all the crap that you grew up with and all the stuff that's still in your mind, and using hypnosis and rituals and all the other modalities, Reiki, energy healing. You're transmuting that into something that's more positive and healthy for someone. And hypnosis does it so well because it actually just changes your mind. It completely rewrites all that bad programming, if you will, in the mind. With a past life regression, I get you into a deeper hypnotic state, and the type of past life regression I do, we go back and we explore one full past life. People come to me for curiosity's sake all the time, but my goal is healing in this life. And I also tell people, you don't even have to believe in reincarnation or past life to get healing from a past life regression. And that's because if you just believe that your brain is a powerful thing, a powerful machine, or whatever you want to call it, and it's going to tell you a story that will help you heal, if that's what you believe, that's perfectly fine because you're still going to heal from it. If you come in and you believe that it's a past life, which I do, that's going to help you heal as well. And so you go back and you explore this entire past life. We go older and younger, sometimes back and forth, all the way to your death in that past life. But what I do different than some people is I then take you into that space between lives. And that's when we talk about what's going on in your life today that is being affected by this past life. What are the lessons that you need to learn? What do you need to change? What healing can take place? And then one of the most powerful things in a past life regression, I think, is when I ask, and if I know the person's name, if they've been able to tell me the name in the past life, I will say their name. So if so-and-so was standing in front of you right now, what would they say to you? That is always the most powerful part of a past life regression, is just to hear what the past life person, whoever they were, would tell them today. So I love using it for healing, and it's really powerful for that.
Yeah, that sounds like, to me, so much more of a powerful practice than, like you say, just doing it for curiosity's sake to say,
Yeah.
oh, was this or that in a past life, which really doesn't serve you in this present moment. But it sounds like what you're doing, going through and finding out what from that past life can help you heal and do that transformative alchemy here in this life now.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm all for curiosity. I also do past life readings where I use my clairvoyance. And in that regard, I'm just telling people what I see. The healing has to come after with that. But with this past life regression hypnosis, the goal for me definitely is to have some sort of healing, some sort of guidance or lesson that they can walk out of my office and have something different in their life.
Yeah, that sounds like a great outcome from something. I think you and I probably have a similar belief. Like, I will teach people practical magic, like how to find a new love or how to use magic to get money. But I'm with you as far as the main goal is for magic to change you and transform you.
Yeah.
But I find that no matter how people come into magic, even if they come into it wanting to get one specific thing, if they actually follow the steps and get into it, it will end up transforming them along the way too.
I think so too, because it enables you to take the power that's been stolen from you from everything around you. You take that power back in yourself even if you're asking a deity to help you or to give you that power, you're still channeling that power and making it happen. And I think the first time that you do a spell or magic or a ritual or prayer, anything like that, and you see something happen from that, that is transformative right there, because you see, oh, I did that. I was part of that, and I changed my circumstances around me.
Yeah. Do you have memories of some of the first times you did something like that where you knew that you created that change in your life?
Oh, for some of the first times. Now we're going far back now. Well, this isn't too far back, but I have more of a memory of some of the more recent things. Like the house I'm sitting in right now, I manifested this house and what I have here. And I've been here 2 years now. I did a vision board, and I think a vision board is powerful magic if you actually work the magic. Kind of like if you do a spell jar and you never actually light the candle on top of it or anything. Like if you make a vision board and you tuck it into a closet, you're not doing the magic. So you have to work the magic. And I worked the magic, and I put on this vision board exactly what I wanted, the format of the house I wanted. I put a pool on that sucker, never thinking that that would ever be anything I would get. Fruit trees and animals and stuff. We never thought we'd ever be able to sell that old house we had. And it just all began to fall into place. Every part of it. We sold the house for more than we thought we would ever get out of it, because several years before we'd been told that if we didn't put a lot of work into it, we'd never sell it. But we sold it without doing any work at all. And my parents offered land here for us, which we didn't even know where we would go. And my parents just out of the blue say, yeah, we have 10 acres out in Gaston, and we're going to give an acre to all the children. If you want to buy a couple more, you can. So we ended up getting 3 acres out here, found this house. It's a modular home, so we had it built exactly like we wanted it. And my husband got a pool as well, and fencing for our animals. And just as I see things transform, it is everything on that freaking vision board. Like I manifested this place, this office that I'm sitting in, my own office, that I can have a huge altar and crazy stuff all over the walls and whatever I want to do in here. And I made it happen. I know I did. So that's one example.
That is an awesome one. I've had some good success with vision boards myself. I know when you said office, it made me think, because one that I had made back in the day, before I had kids or anything, I had put this weird thing. Sometimes, I think you get divinely inspired. And I had made this vision board, and it was actually like a photo album, and it had different things on different pages. And I was a school teacher at the time. And I put on this page, like, I am the VP of a company. And I had like this office with this desk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know why I even put that one in there, because it was sort of out of character, but everything else in the book had happened and I had put it away. I wasn't really focusing on it. And then some point in time, I got it out and I opened it, and like, I was so freaked out because my husband and I started a business, and I became the VP of our business, and was sitting in the office, and it was that exact desk. And I had to,
Wow.
I was like, oh, okay, that doesn't happen by coincidence that you have this exact desk. And it was huge, elaborate desk. So it was really strange.
That's incredible. People, I think, discount the power of vision boards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so, because I don't know, maybe because it's gone more mainstream. And so people think of it as a new age thing, but it's something that I think it's been around for a long time, whether or not people have done quite the same way. They didn't have necessarily magazines to cut things out of, but that drawing, making pictures either in your mind or on paper of what you want.
Yeah, because the more you see it, the more you put it out there. And every day, if you put that vision board right there by, let's say, your bathroom mirror, every day that's what's going in your mind. And so, as a person who's engaged in hypnosis all the time, helping people do that, I know that your brain is a powerful thing. And so, if there's a car that you want and you put that car on your vision board, you're going to start seeing that car. and you're going to be scrolling through Facebook and you're going to actually catch sight of that car being sold. And just things are going to come together. It's almost like the universe conspires to make it happen when you put it in your mind. You're creating synopses in your mind with these things, and they just begin to happen.
Yeah, it's amazing how it does. And I've noticed too that I've known some stories where people like called in stuff on their vision board and then they hadn't done the personal growth work.
Mm-hmm.
Like this guy who had he had this picture of this woman, and he met the woman that looked exactly like that at the bar, and she came up to him and was like, will you take a selfie or a picture of me and my friend and stuff? And he like had her phone, but he had manifested her into his life, but he was afraid to actually ask for her number or ask her out.
Wow.
And you're like, that's why we have to do like the whole package.
Yeah.
That's why prayer and meditation and all these other things that we do in a pagan or magical practice are important too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just about casting the spell. It's about who you are as a person and your own spiritual growth. It's a spiritual path. It's not just, I mean, I guess people can do it just to do magic, but I think the power, if it's coming from within, you have to get yourself at least on a healing path of some sort.
Yeah. And I know you're a fan of bringing prayer to paganism. So share a little bit about that, because I think a lot of times people think prayer is just for Christians or Muslims or Jewish people, and it's not something that us crazy pagans or people do.
And I was that person. I was that person for a really long time because it was just pushed down my throat so much back when I was in church. And I mean, I was a missionary in my early 20s. I went overseas as a Christian missionary. I went to Bible college. I was searching for something, and I thought that's where I was supposed to find it. So when I got out of that and finally realized that that was not my path, and it was just, I was just trying to please, I don't know, my parents, or, I was looking for someone to tell me, yeah, you're doing good. You're all right. When I got out of that, I didn't want anything Christian in my life. I didn't want to have to do with anything. And even when I was back in college becoming a hypnotherapist and the spiritual coaching and all that, which really was only 4 years ago because I went back to school in my 40s. So we had a class that we had to take on prayer. And I went into it with the biggest chip on my shoulder. And I had a few pagan friends in there too. And none of us, we had to pray every week together. We had to meet with a prayer thing. And we went in there saying, we're pagans and we're not going to pray. We don't believe in prayer, but we'll do a ritual or something like that. Like, we had the biggest attitudes about it. And so I went through this class and I read this book by Thich Nhat Hanh, or I think that's his name. I think he's a Buddhist monk. That changed my life. And so now when I mentor pagans, I give them this book to read. I say, read this book, tell me what you think about it. And I've had people say, now my view has changed. But I came out of that class continuing to do prayer meetings with people and taking back prayer. Prayer is not just a Christian thing or Muslim or whatever religion you want to think about. Our ancestors, our pagan ancestors, they prayed. And I recently, last year, I was able to go into a Presbyterian church. One of my friends was going to speak there and she wasn't able to speak, so she asked me to take her place. So I went in this Presbyterian church to talk about paganism. I was terrified. It was the first time I'd been back in the church in probably 2 decades. And here I am going in there to face these people. And I had been a children's minister in a Presbyterian church when I was young. So I went in there and they were so, so nice to me. And one of the things that I told them that probably shocked them when they were asking me about casting spells is I told them that all y'all cast spells too. When you say a prayer in your church, when you say your prayers at home, prayer is casting a spell. You are asking for action from the universe, from God, or whatever, you're calling on, you're asking for something to change. That is what a spell is. Prayer is a spell. A spell is prayer. And people were just looking at me like I was insane. But I truly believe that. I think that whatever you call it, I will pray for you. Now, my prayer may not be kneeling down in front of the cross. It may be lighting a candle. It might be dancing. It might be drumming or any number of things, but it's still prayer.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. My one daughter has a shirt that she got from a priestess, and I don't even remember which religion, but it's like this I pray shirt, and it's got like the praying hands. And so she got it from a pagan, but she loves wearing it because, we live in South Carolina too. So we're in that Bible Belt, and she's like, everybody looks at her like, oh, look at this good, sweet girl. And she's like, but you don't know who I'm praying to. So, yeah, I think prayer is a very powerful thing. I like that thought of like every thought is a prayer and every action is like a meditation or a form of meditation. Like your whole body, your whole life can be a prayerful, meditative thing.
Yeah. If prayer is communication, if you're in communication with whatever you call your divine source, whatever name you give it, then you're in prayer.
Yeah.
You could be in prayer while you're casting runes or doing a card reading because you're in communication with a divine source.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have two more questions because we're at an hour, but I just want to ask you one really quick about, I know that you have a lot of different things that you do. You do the hypnosis and the past life regressions, and I think you do some coaching for newbie pagans and stuff. You also have something that you offer called a toe reading.
Yes.
And I need to know a little bit about that because I was like, that is cool looking. I've never seen that before. So is that kind of similar like reading palms or?
It's somewhat similar to palm reading. It's related to reflexology and you use your intuition. I actually learned it when I was in school. When it was on my syllabus, I thought, what in the world is toe reading? I don't know if I'm interested in people's toes, but I had to take it. So I took this class going into it yet again. I feel like I just had a bad attitude about a lot of things in school. Maybe it was just because I was an old lady in there or something. I don't know. But it was so amazing. And by the end of the class, and I had to take an advanced class in it as well, I loved it. And now I go to festivals in South Carolina, North Carolina, even in Georgia. When I go to a festival, I offer toe readings. I do it online as well. I do it in person if someone asks me, but that's kind of my festival offering because people will say, I've never heard of a toe reading. Let's see what this is all about. And so what you're doing is you're looking at the shape, the color, lines, different things on the toes, and each toe is associated with a different element. And each foot, like one foot is associated with your personal life, your very personal life. That would be your left foot. Your right foot is associated with how you present yourself out in the world. And so as I look, for instance, your big toe is associated with the element ether. So it's your ether toe or your destiny toe. Whether it's on your right or left-hand side, helps you interpret it. So is your big toe super, super straight? Does that mean possibly you're walking your destined path? Do you have a crooked destiny toe? What does that mean? And so it's actually soul coaching. So you can call it SOUL coaching, but it's like SOLE, soul coaching, because you're talking to the person and you're asking them questions and you're telling them what you're interpreting. And I have seen toes change immediately in front of me. Now, I've seen them change where people have come to a festival, had their toes read, and then 3 months later, they will show up and want it to be read again, and their toes have changed. But I had one person who changed right during my toe reading because she released some things that were going on in her life that I was sharing with her that I saw carried in her toes, and her toe shifted and changed right in front of me.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's really cool. And you do that for people like if somebody wanted to have that done, they'll send you pictures?
Yeah, they can send me pictures. I do offer that on my website.
Okay, well, we're going to give out the website and we'll put it in the show notes. But I just wanted to ask you one last question, which is, what would you most like to see magic change or heal in the world?
Oh, I think right now with everything going on in the world, I wish that every single witch all around the world could get together with this super powerful spell that would completely erase racism in the world. I think that is hurting so many people. And I'm an empath. And so this anger and rage and sadness, I cannot protect myself or my house well enough to not feel that on an everyday basis. And it's not, I will hold it. I will carry it if I have to. But I know not everybody protects themselves as much as I do. And I know I'm feeling the pain. And I see stories online. I've looked in people's faces, and racism is just killing people's soul.
Yep, I would agree. Well, I know there's a lot of people out there, a lot of witches out there working in that vein, especially right now. So hopefully we're going to make some big progress in that area.
I mean, maybe things have to shake up like I was talking about with the Morrigan. Maybe things just have to be a complete, absolute wreck. And when the dust passes, things are going to be better.
Yeah, it's like you said, sometimes, with the Morrigan, she has to do it in chaos. And I think sometimes other parts of our life, we kind of have to go through that chaos to get through to the change, because transformation is not always pretty.
And often, it is not. Very rarely is it pretty.
Yeah, very rarely. Just like the caterpillar in the cocoon, and it's a gooey mess there for a while.
Yep.
So I guess we're in the gooey mess right now.
We definitely are.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It has been so cool to talk to you, and I've just enjoyed it so much. So I really appreciate your time. So if people are looking for tarot readings or hypnosis or past life regression or any of the good things that you offer, they would go to, it's 3raysoflight.org. And that's the actual number 3.
The number 3. And I'm on Facebook as well. I do online right now during this time. I'm doing online full moon ceremonies. I have rituals. I had a new moon ritual yesterday. I teach classes. I do retreats. And you can find all that on my website and on my Facebook. And then I have the podcast, a witchy Southern podcast called Belle, Book, and Candle, if anyone's interested in that as well. It's Belle, like Southern Belle.
Okay, cool. So I'll put links in the show notes to your website and to your Facebook page and to your podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, and we'll see you out there in the Southern Witch page.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.